Hey folks, trauma therapist here. Wanted to spend a few minutes speaking about why it's so incredibly difficult for many of us who are healing from relational trauma to advocate for our needs or to speak up and communicate boundaries, things like that. But really speaking specifically to the needs portion, okay? So why does this happen? Well, many of us, I'm gonna kind of drop this into two buckets, okay? So bucket number one, many of us grew up with an attachment figure or figures that when we attempted to communicate a need of ours, it was ignored, it was shamed, we were made fun of or belittled, or we were told that we were selfish for having that need, okay? And so if that happens over and over again in that most important, earliest relationship in our lives with that attachment figure, then we are programmed as adults to believe those things even as we mature and get older, okay? So we continue to hold on to this belief or beliefs that it's not okay for me to have needs, I shouldn't have needs, it's selfish for me to have needs, it's not safe for me to express my needs, okay? That's what's modeled for us. And that's what sticks to us until we begin to do this very critical work of healing our relational trauma, okay? Bucket number two is we have attachment figures that do not take care of their own needs, okay? They ignore their own needs. They are very quick to meet the needs of others, but they do not meet their own needs, okay? And so for many of us, this looked like mothers that were very self-sacrificing, okay? A lot of folks use this term, quote unquote, martyr, taking care of everybody else's needs around them, but not taking care of their own needs. And there's an undercurrent of anger and resentment beneath the surface because of this, because they're constantly taking care of everybody else, but they're not taking care of themselves, okay? And so that's modeled for us. And so I wanna remind folks, so that creates a confusion, right? Hey honey, sweetheart, oh, yep, it's important for you to meet your needs, but mom's not gonna do that, okay? She's not important enough to do that. It's okay, I'm fine, I don't need it. My priority is taking care of you and your siblings, okay? I don't need to take care of myself. That creates a confusion in the child, whether we want to admit that or not, okay? And that's what many of us experienced growing up. And it's important to note that this was modeled for our parents, right? And especially for women in particular, right? Women's role is to be here on this earth, to be of service to others, and their wants and needs don't matter, okay? They are the lowest priority there is. So I want to remind folks also that if you're like listening to this right now and you're like, well, I'm really good. Yeah, like I take care of everybody else's needs. I'm fine. I would question you. I would say to you, okay, you're really good about meeting the needs of others, your children, your coworkers, your friends, but are you really listening to your own needs? And does that feel more difficult for you to be able to do that? Or does that feel really hard? Does that feel selfish? Does that feel like self-indulgence? So it's just something that I would encourage you to be curious about as you're navigating your healing process. And so this is going to be one of the biggest things that we're going to work on in therapy in relational trauma, is beginning to connect with our physical bodies and our emotions so that we understand what our needs are, because a lot of us are so cut off from that. We've kind of cut off from that part of ourselves, and we have ignored those needs over and over again, and so we don't even know what they are. And so that's a big part of the process, is beginning to understand what our needs are. That's something that we work on in therapy. And then the second part of that is beginning to advocate for ourselves and speak up for what our needs are, okay? And it's really easy for me to say that, well, just start to advocate for yourself. Just do a little bit better with that. That's really hard for most people, okay? In fact, it can actually feel really scary to do that for most people. And so we really need to honor that, and we need to start small, and we need to expand that window of tolerance as we try to experiment with communicating our needs and advocating for ourselves, okay? And so that's kind of the biggest tip I'm gonna give here is this feels really hard, so start super, super small. The folks that you feel safest with in your life, start with them. Communicate with them, hey, I'm really gonna try to work on this. Advocating for myself and communicating my needs. Is it okay if I experiment a little bit with you and like periodically kind of communicate something that I really would love to receive from you or that I need right now that I'm a little bit afraid of? That's super vulnerable, but that's really the best way to start, folks, with those people that we feel safest with. And for many of us, that's like 1 or 2 people, and that's okay. That's a wonderful place to start. Sometimes that means starting with our therapist, right? Practicing that in session with our therapist, communicating our needs. I just did a video about how I try to create a really safe space for the people that I work with to experiment with self-advocacy, right? At the beginning of the session, I will make sure that they know, like, hey, listen, we have an agenda for today. We were going to work on A, B, or C, but I want to remind you, this is your time, and we can always stray from that if there's something more important that we need to focus on today. Okay, so this is your time. And I like open that space for them to communicate to me what's best for them today, okay? Guys, choices, right? So key with this again, and I'm just going to reiterate this, window of tolerance, all right? So as we experiment with this more and more and we get more comfortable and we find that it's safe for us to communicate our needs, we can start to go bigger and bigger and bigger. And you know what, folks? 10 steps forward, 10 steps back. Sometimes this is going to go really well, and then we're going to interact with somebody who is not that safe, and they may push back against us communicating our needs, and that's okay. That's data for us, right? We can just be curious about that relationship or that person. And if we want to try again, we can. If we don't want to, we don't have to. I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for being willing to come on here to expand and learn and grow.